A truck once withdrawn from a nuclear testing site. Would you dare to bring it back to life? Hello, everyone. Some of you may have wondered why so few people are willing to touch vehicles like this. Behind the host stands a machine, a truck that once served at a nuclear testing facility. This vehicle was not involved in the final nuclear detonation. Instead, before the tests began, it was used for various engineering operations. According to the records the host has reviewed, this truck was specially commissioned for that purpose. It was not a civilian vehicle adapted later. Its primary role was tunnel excavation support, transporting earth and rock underground. Afterward, once all assigned tasks were completed, these trucks were abandoned in the nearby desert. They remained there for as long as 35 years. On this visit, the host is helping a man named Wensi to assess and revive this vehicle. As you can see, both the front and rear have already been disconnected. This makes the repair process safer and easier, with no risk of the truck suddenly moving or rolling off the flatbed. Now, let's take a look at the engine. At the very top sits the engine's oil pump, with oil coolers mounted on both sides. This is a once-through, air-cooled engine. The advantage of this design is its mechanical simplicity. There is no complex cooling system to maintain. The cab itself is extremely narrow. Inside, you'll find a voltmeter, along with oil pressure and oil temperature gauges. The hour meter shows 1,749 operating hours. This strongly suggests that after completing its work at the nuclear test site, the truck was parked and never used again. Next, the pedals were inspected. The throttle pedal was found to be completely seized. However, vehicles of this era use a purely mechanical pushrod system by disconnecting the linkage here. The engine can be operated manually. Here is the engine nameplate. As the host reads the specifications aloud, this is the exact engine model. However, it dates back far too long. Searching this model number today only returns engines manufactured within the last decade. Here, we can see an emergency fire suppression system. According to the information he provided, this engine should produce around 132 horsepower. We also ran a preliminary assessment based on these figures. Torque should be approximately 500 Newton. In addition, the vehicle's overall weight is not extreme, roughly 10 metric tons, which translates to about 23,000 pounds. Next, the engine oil was inspected. He noted that the oil appears unusually thin. This is likely due to diesel fuel having previously mixed into the oil. As a result, fresh oil will need to be added later. But this does not prevent a startup test. Here are the battery connection cables. At this point, he discovered something unusual and took a closer look. Tracing the starter's negative terminal, including the main grounding point, he found that the wiring had corroded severely. There is also an additional ground strap. It appears to be secured to this bolt here. This is the grounding wire connection point. He believes the ground wire runs inside. Eventually, the entire length of wiring will need replacement. Here, as well, he briefly checked the routing of the lines. Some of the internal piping has also deteriorated due to age. Beneath this cover plate sits the engine's oil pump. This is a V6 diesel engine. The oil pump system is supplied by Bosch. 4 diesel engines of this configuration once the high-pressure fuel pump is confirmed. Achieving fuel delivery and startup is relatively straightforward. However, before attempting ignition, there are still many tasks to complete. As mentioned earlier, the electrical system requires major attention after opening the fuel pump system. Heavy contamination can be seen inside. Part of the cleaning process has already been completed. Mostly rats and other small animals had turned this area into a nest. Because of that, they first thoroughly rinsed the engine bay. Once the grime was washed away, the full cylinder layout became visible, including the oil pump assembly. Here is the engine's air intake. However, the intake caps on both sides were already missing. When a flashlight was shined inside, a serious issue was revealed. The interior was heavily contaminated, clear evidence that animals had entered. As a result, all intake piping had to be removed. Once removed, the situation inside became obvious. Large amounts of debris were found. Had they attempted to start the engine earlier? Some of this debris could have been sucked directly into the cylinders. Animal droppings were clearly visible inside. As for the cleaning process, there was no need to disassemble the engine. A vacuum was sufficient to remove the debris. After vacuuming, penetrating oil was applied to flush and lubricate the interior. This also helped treat nearby areas where surface rust may have developed, addressing as much corrosion as possible. A wire brush was used for the final pass. As for the excess oil residue, a wire brush alone was not enough. The vacuum was again used to remove it. After this entire cleaning sequence, nearly all internal contamination was completely eliminated. Here, the relay cable was replaced along with the battery 2 starter cables. Both positive and negative leads were replaced entirely. They now prepare to install the battery. All components were newly purchased. Before connecting the battery, one final check was required, specifically to confirm the vehicle's operating voltage. This is critical and cannot be guessed. Some older vehicles operate on 12 volts. By referencing the starter's nameplate, they confirmed that the vehicle operates on a 24-volt system, so the batteries were connected accordingly. Next, they decided not to rely on the original starter motor. Instead, they jump-started the engine directly. With a brief contact and then releasing it, the engine finally came to life. At the exhaust outlet, smoke immediately appeared. They explained that this smoke was caused by the large amount of penetrating oil sprayed earlier. When the engine fired up, some of that oil entered the combustion chambers and burned during ignition, rather than diesel supplied by the fuel pump. At this point, attention turned to the fuel system because the vehicle had been sitting unused for more than 35 years. As a result, all of the old, degraded fuel in the tank was completely pumped out and replaced with fresh diesel fuel. While reviewing comments about this vehicle, they noticed one topic repeatedly mentioned and widely discussed, specifically when overseas viewers learned that this vehicle had been used in nuclear test site construction. Their first concern was whether it had been exposed to radiation during its service life. Some viewers suggested that the creator should first use a radiation detector, commonly known as a Geiger counter, to test the vehicle and confirm whether radiation was present. They warned that if radiation were detected, the vehicle should be discarded immediately and kept far away from people. After all, it is currently located in a residential area. However, based on the owner's explanation and his overall approach, he appears very confident that this vehicle was never exposed to radiation, because the person who sold it to him was repairing multiple vehicles at the same time and would have identified any contamination beforehand. This is the key point of the discussion. People often joke and say that foreigners tend to be more cautious. And when it comes to issues like nuclear radiation, that caution becomes very serious. In matters involving potential health risks, no one takes chances. The blogger originally planned to pressurize the fuel system by feeding fuel through the low-pressure pump to push diesel toward the high-pressure pump. However, he soon realized the pump was no longer functioning, so he opened the inspection cover at this location. At first, he believed the 2 bolts above were simply air bleed screws. But, in reality, they were actually the fasteners for the side cover plate. His intention was to use the hand primer to push fuel back into the high-pressure pump and bleed any trapped air from the system, allowing it to escape from this location. But after several attempts, he eventually confirmed that the rubber seal inside the hand primer had deteriorated and could no longer function properly. Replacing it with a new part was not a realistic option, because the part was extremely difficult to source and would require a long waiting period. He had come only to help temporarily. Therefore, he chose an alternative solution using a pressure bulb, connecting it directly from the fuel filter straight to the high-pressure pump. He linked the fuel lines together by manually squeezing the pressure bulb. Fuel was forced into the high-pressure pump, successfully bleeding the entire fuel system. Even then, he still hoped that the 2 bolts on the cover plate could be used to help build internal pressure and expel any remaining air. At the very least, based on his inspection from the fuel tank to the diesel filter, the system showed no obvious faults, which led him to question the true purpose of these 2 bolts. Previously, both bolts had yellow markings. Later, some viewers suggested that these markings likely dated back to the vehicle's original service period, each time maintenance is performed. Technicians responsible for the work at this exact location, after torquing the bolts correctly, will apply a yellow paint mark as a visual indicator, showing the fasteners have been inspected and secured. This is standard practice. While investigating the fuel pump, he unexpectedly discovered a solenoid valve here. When power was applied to it, the engine suddenly showed signs of starting. Earlier, he had traced the starter wiring and realized this solenoid was actually tied into the starter circuit. An unexpected but important discovery. Here, the high-pressure fuel pump is partially opened. Above it should be the return line. As pressure is applied, fuel sprays along the body of the pump, clearly indicating that internal pressure has already been partially established. He also sprayed penetrating oil inside, suspecting that internal components might be stuck. The side inspection cover, however, remained unopened. At this point, some viewers might ask, is the blogger inexperienced? In reality, that's not the case. The main issue is his age and the fact that this machine is extremely old. He has worked in mechanical repair for more than 7 years, but equipment of this era comes in many variations, and not every technician has encountered them all when dealing with very old machinery and legacy systems. Certain diagnostic experience may naturally be limited. We've mentioned this before. Some old machines can still function. So why do they eventually fail completely? Because the technicians who once maintained them have retired or passed on, and when that knowledge disappears, these machines slowly become impossible to repair. So now, all that remains in the end is that the blogger sought advice from experienced professionals and followed their guidance. They explained that on this cover plate, there is no such thing as a bleed screw. All that's required is to open the fuel return line and then apply pressure directly to the fuel system. Following the normal flow path of the pump, the trapped air will purge itself naturally. This was simply a gap in experience. He hadn't expected that this fuel pump would actually be such a straightforward design. At last, the engine was finally able to start properly, but once it was running, new issues immediately appeared. The engine was leaking oil. Fortunately, locating the leak wasn't difficult. This vehicle is equipped with an oil pressure gauge at the connection point for the gauge. The flexible hose had cracked, so in theory, only a single fitting needed to be replaced. However, it was impossible to know how many other hidden problems this old hose might still have. Finding a replacement fitting would take time. So instead, he installed a blocking cap and temporarily sealed this port. At worst, this only means the oil pressure can't be monitored for now. After that, the blogger continued helping with some basic restoration work on the vehicle. Because once Vince takes over, this process will take quite some time. First, he topped up the engine oil. Earlier, this engine had likely been contaminated with diesel fuel in the oil, causing the oil level to rise abnormally. So, at this stage, he simply followed the normal oil level and added a small amount later on. This vehicle will still undergo more extensive work by Vince. Once everything is completed, a full oil change will be done all at once. In any case, this vehicle won't be driven on public roads. Next, the intake hose was partially restored. As for the air filter element, Vince will later take his time to source the correct replacement for an engine that has been dormant. Filters of this type are usually easy to find, but the hand primer mentioned earlier will be more difficult. Alright, that brings us to the end of day 2. On the first day, Vince wasn't present on site. and didn't get to witness the moment the engine came back to life. So on the second day, the blogger returned once again to help restart the vehicle. And this time, let's share in the moment of it coming back to life. As for Vince, you can clearly see for yourself. This place is basically a workshop. Surrounded by residential homes, Vince then handed him a can of starting fluid, joking that this is the blogger's favorite tool. They sprayed a small amount into the intake, and on the other side, Vince sprayed as well. After that, the blogger told Vince to remove this push rod, and then this wire. And unexpectedly, he discovered that touching it directly to the cylinder would start the engine immediately. The engine started smoothly, without hesitation. Vince also mentioned that he plans to sell this vehicle. Buying it now would mean a lower price. Before further restoration is carried out, as the restoration progresses, the value will continue to rise. And with that, today's video comes to an end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and save it. We'll see you again in the next episode. Thanks to everyone for watching.